Right now, somewhere inside Iran, a 56-year-old man is hiding. He has not shown his face in public since the moment he became the most powerful person in his country. He has not given a single speech. He has not released one video. He has not even confirmed his own location. The Pentagon says he is wounded and likely disfigured. Iran's own state media quietly called him a wounded war veteran. His own ambassador told a foreign newspaper that his legs, arms, and hands were injured in the same airstrike that killed his father, his mother, his wife, and at least 4 other members of his family. And yet this man, Mojtaba Khamenei, Iran's brand new supreme leader, just issued his first command. Not a plea for ceasefire, not a call for negotiations. His very first order to the country he now leads was this: keep the Strait of Hormuz closed. And then he added something that sent a chill through every diplomatic office in the world. He said that other fronts, ones where the enemy has little experience, would be opened if the strikes on Iran continue. A wounded man, hiding from assassins, running a war from a secret location, and his opening move is to threaten the world's most critical oil choke point and hint at new fronts nobody has seen yet. Think about what that tells you about where this conflict is actually headed. Because most of what you are hearing from mainstream coverage is focused on the military strikes, the missile counts, the bomb tonnage. Very few people are zooming out and asking the real question: what does it mean when a nation puts a ghost in charge of a war? That is exactly what we are going to break down today, right here on Unlocked History Hub. Stay with me, because the full picture of who Mojtaba Khamenei is, how he came to power, what his injuries mean for Iran's decision-making, and how the world is already being reshaped by his very first order, that full picture is something you need to understand right now. Before we go any further, if you are the kind of person who wants real analysis, not just headlines, hit subscribe right now and tap the bell. We cover the story behind the story, and this one goes very deep. Like this video if you think more people need to understand what is actually unfolding here, because what is happening in Iran right now is not just a Middle East story. It is a global story, and it is moving fast. Let us go back to February 28, 2026, because that single day changed everything. In the early hours of that morning, U.S. and Israeli forces launched Operation Epic Fury, a coordinated air campaign targeting Iranian military sites, nuclear infrastructure, and leadership compounds in Tehran. Within the first 24 hours, somewhere between 100 and 200 bombs were dropped. B-2 stealth bombers dropped massive bunker busters on underground facilities. The Israeli Air Force flew its largest combat sortie in history. And in one compound in Tehran, the airstrike that killed Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, Iran's supreme leader for more than 35 years, also wounded his son Mojtaba, who was present at the same location. CNN, citing a source familiar with the situation, reported that Mojtaba suffered a fractured foot, a bruise around his left eye, and lacerations to his face. Iran's ambassador to Cyprus told The Guardian that injuries extended to his legs, arms, and hands. Iranian state media, using a Farsi word that translates to wounded war veteran, quietly acknowledged the injuries without providing specific details. Iran's own president's son told state media that Mojtaba was safe, but carefully avoided denying the injuries altogether. Now here is where the story becomes genuinely extraordinary. 8 days after that attack, on March 8th, Iran's assembly of experts gathered in Qom under conditions that were deeply irregular. The building where they normally meet had already been destroyed by bombing. Some members of the 88-seat body were reportedly not even informed the meeting was taking place and could not attend, despite being in the same city. Yet the session went forward, and with roughly 85% of the votes from those present, Mojtaba Khamenei, a man the public barely knew, a man who had spent his entire career operating in the shadows, a man who was at that very moment recovering from injuries sustained less than 2 weeks earlier, was named Iran's third supreme leader. The announcement was extraordinary on its own. But what happened, or rather what did not happen in the days that followed, was even more striking. No video, no audio, no photographs, no public appearance of any kind. In a country where the Supreme Leader's image is plastered on walls, printed on banners, and broadcast on state television around the clock, Iran's new leader had simply vanished from public view entirely. Instead, Iranian state media began doing something that caught the attention of analysts around the world. They started airing archival footage of Mojtaba from years earlier. They released a 4-minute documentary about his life, his seminary studies, his role in the Iran-Iraq War, his ties to the Revolutionary Guard. And according to multiple reports, Iranian propaganda networks began filling the visual gaps with AI-generated images, digital recreations of a man whose real face could not safely be shown because showing it might reveal his location to the very forces trying to kill him. This is not speculation. The New York Times, citing Iranian officials, reported that one of the main reasons Mojtaba had not communicated publicly was the very real concern that any communication could expose his whereabouts. Israel's defense minister had already said publicly that any leader chosen by Iran would be an unequivocal target for elimination. President Trump told Fox News that he thought Mojtaba was probably alive in some form, adding that he was damaged. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth stood at a Pentagon podium and said the new Supreme Leader is wounded and likely disfigured, calling the leadership cowering and desperate. These are not the kinds of statements made about a stable, secure government. These are the statements made when the other side genuinely does not know whether the person running the country can actually run the country. And this is where my read of the situation diverges from the dominant coverage, and I want to be direct about it. Most of the analysis out there is framing Mojtaba's invisibility as a sign of Iranian weakness. And yes, in one sense, a supreme leader who cannot appear in public is not projecting strength, but I think that framing misses something important, because consider what this man did from behind a screen, injured, in hiding, with no public presence. He issued a defiant statement that was read aloud on Iranian state television by a news presenter with no video, no voice recording, nothing to confirm it was even him. And that statement did 3 things simultaneously. First, it told the Iranian military and the Revolutionary Guard that the regime had not collapsed, that leadership continuity existed, and that the war would go on. Second, it sent a message to Gulf states and the wider world that the Strait of Hormuz would remain closed for as long as U.S. and Israeli strikes continued, directly threatening the economic stability of dozens of nations that have nothing to do with this conflict. And third, it introduced a phrase that I think deserves far more attention than it received: other fronts in which the enemy has little experience. What does that mean? It could mean cyber attacks on Western infrastructure. It could mean activating proxy networks in places beyond Lebanon and Iraq. It could mean economic warfare through energy markets. Nobody outside of Iran's inner circle knows exactly what it refers to. And that ambiguity is itself a weapon. Let me tell you who Mojtaba Khamenei actually is, because this matters enormously for understanding what comes next. He is 56 years old. He studied at seminaries in Qom, the religious and intellectual heart of Iranian clerical life. He served in some capacity during the Iran-Iraq War in the 1980s, which is where Iranian state media gets the language of wounded warrior to describe him. For the past 2 decades, he has operated almost entirely out of public view, functioning as a deeply influential power broker with tight connections to the Revolutionary Guard and to the economic networks that control large portions of Iran's wealth. In 2019, the United States Treasury Department sanctioned him specifically for using those networks to advance what the Treasury called his father's destabilizing regional ambitions. Analysts who tracked him closely describe him as at least as hardline as his father. Some describe him as more extreme. During the 2022 Mahsa Amini protests, when tens of thousands of Iranians took to the streets demanding change, demonstrators chanted his name and called for his death, specifically because they feared he would one day assume the leadership. Their fear proved correct. And the manner in which he assumed it, in a rushed secret vote with incomplete attendance, amid a bombing campaign, with the assembly's own meeting hall in rubble, has sparked criticism even within Iran's clerical establishment. Several members of the assembly openly warned that appointing the dead leader's son resembled hereditary monarchy dressed up as religious governance. One member said he was not even informed the meeting was happening, despite being in Qom that day. This matters for the world beyond Iran because the question of whether Mojtaba Khamenei has genuine legitimacy inside his own country directly affects how long and how intensely this war continues. A leader with consolidated authority can make decisions, offer concessions, and potentially negotiate. A leader whose position was disputed from day one, who has not been seen in public, who is described by enemy governments as wounded and disfigured, operates in a very different political environment. Every move he makes is being watched, not just by the United States and Israel, but by hardliners inside the Revolutionary Guard who want to make sure the new leader maintains their trust, and by a restless Iranian population that was already protesting in the streets before this war even began. Running a war from a secret location while managing those competing pressures simultaneously is an almost impossible task. And yet, that is exactly what he is being asked to do right now. The global consequences of this situation are already being felt in ways that reach into ordinary American lives. The Strait of Hormuz, the narrow waterway that carries roughly 20% of the world's oil supply, has been functionally closed to Western shipping since the war began. Tanker traffic collapsed from 24 vessels per day to near zero. Over 200 commercial ships sit stranded or anchored, waiting for the situation to change. Maersk, the largest container shipping company in the world, suspended all Hormuz crossings. Maritime insurance premiums have hit multi-year highs. Brent crude has been trading above $100 a barrel. Goldman Sachs is pricing in a 1 in 4 chance of a global recession. Japan, which depends on the strait for 70% of its oil imports, has activated emergency reserve drawdowns. Qatar paused liquefied natural gas production. Kuwait suffered infrastructure damage from falling interceptor debris. UAE scrambled to intercept ballistic missiles and drones. Saudi Arabia shot down unmanned aerial vehicles heading toward its oil fields. The economic shockwave from this war is not hypothetical or future tense. It is happening right now to real supply chains, real energy markets, and real families paying more at the gas station and at the grocery store. At least 1,444 Iranian civilians have been confirmed killed since the war began on February 28th, with over 18,000 injured according to Iran's health ministry. 8 American service members have been confirmed dead. In Lebanon, where Hezbollah opened a second front on March 2nd, nearly 700 people have been killed and over 800,000 displaced. The humanitarian toll is compounding daily. And none of the parties involved have defined what an acceptable end to this conflict actually looks like. Trump has demanded unconditional surrender. Iran's lead negotiator has rejected all negotiations and said no ship will pass through Hormuz until the war ends. Iran's president has publicly listed 3 conditions for stopping: recognition of Iran's rights, financial reparations, and binding international guarantees against future attacks. Unconditional surrender and a list of demands requiring reparations and guarantees do not belong in the same sentence, let alone the same negotiating room. There is no mediator. There is no agreed channel. There is no off-ramp. And the man who just became Iran's supreme leader is running this standoff from a location nobody can confirm, with injuries nobody can fully verify, issuing his first orders through a television presenter reading from a piece of paper. Here is what I keep coming back to. And I want to leave you with this thought because I think it is the most important one. Throughout history, wars have often escalated most dangerously not when both sides are strong and confident, but when one side is cornered, uncertain, and has something to prove. Mojtaba Khamenei did not choose this moment to become supreme leader. It was thrust on him by a bomb that killed his father and most of his immediate family on the same night. It wounded him. He has not appeared in public. He cannot freely communicate. His legitimacy was questioned before the votes were even counted. And yet, his very first order was not to pause, not to test the waters, not to signal any openness to dialogue. It was to keep the strait closed and hint at new fronts nobody has seen yet. That is not the posture of someone looking for an exit. That is the posture of someone who believes that backing down even slightly would cost him the only thing he has left, the support of the Revolutionary Guard and the hardline network that actually controls Iran's military machine. Whether that calculation is right or wrong is almost beside the point. The point is that the man who just issued that first order is wounded, hidden, unverified, and making decisions that are already affecting oil prices, shipping routes, and the economic stability of dozens of nations. The rest of the world is being asked to navigate a crisis whose central figure is, in almost every meaningful sense, a ghost running a war. I believe this is one of the most genuinely unpredictable leadership situations the world has faced in decades, and I think the next 2 weeks will tell us far more about where this ends than the last 2 weeks have. Drop your thoughts in the comments below. I genuinely want to hear them. Do you think Iran's new supreme leader has the political footing to hold on? Do you think there is a diplomatic path out of this conflict, or have we moved past that point? Share this video with someone who needs to understand what is actually happening right now, because the full picture is not getting enough attention. Share it, and let us build that conversation. And if you are not already subscribed to Unlocked History Hub, do it right now. The next chapter of this story is coming fast, and you need to be here when it does.